Hello and welcome to Seasonal Wire, the platform where we speak truth to power. We are back again, and this time we are focusing on the finances, i.e., the rate of the naira as against the dollar, devaluation of the naira, and how that has been going on. I've done a program whereby we've known that they've been using dollars in Nigeria since the 1980s, and that has devalued the naira. That's the reality. Some of you will remember something called traveler's check. We've been using it in the 80s. And every time we used the traveler's check, we were actually devaluing our own currency. That is exactly what we were doing. Traveler's check. I think I might even have had a copy of it somewhere. And he actually talks about, using, converting our dollars into naira, and that has gradually depreciated our currency, and then of course subsequently more reliance, a lot of companies paying for traveling, hotels and things in dollars rather than using our local currency. That devalues what should have been a legal tender, and that was even before the 1999 Constitution, and it's quite shocking that that situation has not been addressed at all. So that is a context we want to put in place, and of course I want to show you something else as well. On top of that, just to give you context, on top of that, of course, we are looking at the rate of the naira as we speak right now. The naira right now, 1 naira against $1. 1 naira is worth 0.0013 of a dollar, which is not even up to 1 cent. And the same thing applies for the CFA, which is a French imposed currency on African countries that the French don't use. So we need to understand that there is a financial, a Western economic system designed to cripple Africa. These realities are something we simply can no longer ignore. We need to work together as one entity, one unit in Africa. We need to come together and devise our own financial structures, our own currency structures that will ensure that the West do not siphon our own wealth out of our hands and leave our people impoverished and then complain when we now try to go and get a better life in Europe or wherever else. We need to wake up. So in that context, let's listen to this broadcast. Here we go.
What are you going to do in the short term, middle term, and long term to rescue the naira? That was a question asked by Nigerian Senator Orji Uzor Kalu during last week's screening session of the country's new CBN governor, Olayemi Michael Cardoso. The senator went on to add, and I quote, "because the naira is finished." Well, strong words there from the senator, but perhaps expressing the frustration of many across Nigeria. Well, the naira is still well and alive, but clearly not in a great place. The Nigerian currency fell to the psychologically important threshold of 1,000 naira to the dollar on the parallel market during the week, further widening the differential with the official market now at almost 30%. Can the new CBN governor and his team work magic around exchange rate policy and monetary policy to restore stability in the markets and the confidence of both domestic and foreign investors? Well, I'm joined now by familiar faces here on Arise News, Dr. Muda Yusuf, who is the director of the Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise and former DG of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, as well as Steve Osho, managing director at Commercio Partner Capitals Limited. Good morning, gentlemen, and welcome to Business Week.
Good morning, Rolake.
Good morning, Rolake. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Great to have you. So my first question, I'll start with you, Dr. Muda Yusuf, is what is contributing to this continued rapid decline in the value of the naira in the past week to more than 1,000 naira to the dollar? Official rate, as at Thursday at least, was at 785. What is causing this rapid decline?
Generally, let me say that we need to manage expectations because the situation is really quite bad. And once there is a collapse of confidence, it's not easy to restore. I think the situation we have faced in the last few weeks has been a result of almost a complete collapse of confidence in the capacity of the monetary authorities to be able to stabilize the currency. And this has been fueled largely by intense speculative onslaught on the Naira. Because following the information that came out, both from the audited reports that were released and some of the commentaries and analysis of those reports, a lot of anxiety has been created among economic players as to whether the situation is actually a situation that has a very good outlook. And evidently, anybody who analyzes all these numbers will come to the conclusion that the outlook is not very good at all. And once you have that kind of outlook, of course, expectations drive business decisions. So the outlook is something that has fueled expectations of further decline in the Naira. And that has further, exacerbated the demand and the pressure, and of course, the slide that we have seen. Secondly, evidently, the CBN has not been able to intervene in the market as we used to have under the previous administration. In 2022, the total intervention by the CBN was about $17 billion. Averagely, that's a monthly average of about $1.4 billion per month. If you look at what the CBN has been able to do, although we don't have much data on the table, but it's evidently far less than that. So if the capacity of the CBN to intervene, and CBN is actually the main supplier in the market, then, it's a no-brainer. So what we are saying is to be expected. So the challenge now is how to restore confidence. And I know that once confidence is broken, it's not easy to restore. So basically, I think it's a question of capacity to intervene by the CBN and the challenge of, collapse of confidence in the foreign exchange market.
Yeah. Thank you very much for sharing those initial insights, Dr. Mude Yusuf. Mr. Steve Oshaw, he refers to an intensive speculative onslaught. And I guess in view of that particular commentary, what do you think can be done to stabilize the currency immediately versus in the long term? Clearly, that speculative onslaught is going to be one of the key areas of target, but what are your thoughts?
Okay, I think Dr. Muda touched on a lot of issues that has caused the current situation that we find ourselves. But going forward, because we have to find a way and solutions about this problem. I think I've said this on this program before, and I'm sure that if you listen to the new CBN governor, he actually touched on that too, because when their question was asked about what is the immediate solution to medium to long-term solution, he actually touched on that. I think we're at the crossroad where we need to actually go into critical thinking and how to solve this problem. For me, there are a lot of things that we have to put in place for us to be able to attract the flows that we need in the market. If you remember some years back, maybe in the past 15 to 20 years, the major supply of liquidity or FX into the market then were from, NNPC, oil majors mostly, and some diaspora money. But right now, if you look at that, most of those flows actually don't come to the interbank market again. They go to CBN, right? And apart from the fact that they go to CBN, the volume that we actually notice that come to the market from then has actually reduced significantly. And you can allude that to the issues that we have when it comes to oil theft and the production. So we've not been able to produce as much as we need to produce. So in terms of oil receipt that we should get, we're not getting as much, even despite the fact that we've seen, increase in the oil price. So that's one side we have to look at. Another thing we have to look at is how to attract both the FDI and FPI. For now, there are a lot of issues where anyone coming to the sector as a foreign direct investors will look at and say, what are the things that I have to look at for me to be able to come in? Security is one thing, and government policies and trust is actually another thing they have to look at, and that's stability in government. Those are the areas that we have to address. That will boil down to mostly on fiscal policies, but in alliance with monetary policy authority. But at the same time, when you are looking at FPI, the major challenge that they have right now is that transparency that is not in the market, and the anxiety that.
One of the things that we Africans are doing wrong, and I want to say this, is that we believe entirely in a system designed by the colonials to ensure that they remain in dominance over our own affairs in African continent, without scrutinizing and understanding any talk of foreign something investment, direct inward investment or whatever you want to call it. It just simply means another avenue in which they can ensure they remain to take control of our assets and our resources in our own country through so-called investment, when they've actually taken our wealth out by depreciating the value of our own currencies to be able to allow them to buy our resources at dirt cheap prices. These are things that many economists, so-called African economists, are not even fathoming or understanding. This is why we need to create our own financial system, and an entirely independent African financial system that will benefit Africans first and foremost. First and foremost. Let's proceed.
Been created over time based on the fact that there's no liquidity. Because the first question they will ask is, if I come in today, what is the possibility that I'll be able to get my money? And for me, I think that's the low-hanging fruit that we need to be able to niche into for now. Another challenge that we have there is we've seen an increase in interest rates across the global market space. The Fed rate has been talking about increase in rate and hike again even before the end of the year. So you've seen Fed rates and rate in T-bills for 10-year notes going as high as 5%, 6%.
You know what is actually quite interesting is that many of this we Africans, we're not even factoring what the BRICS is doing and how that's going to impact. What, for example, when a dollar now starts losing its value, that for $1 we'll have to pay one BRICS currency will be worth 50. Will mean that the US dollar you have to put down $55 for one BRICS currency. That's what the plan is going forward. Among those countries, majority of the countries who are joining the BRICS, that's the plan. How is that going to impact things? Are we still going to be tying our naira to the dollar? Are we still going to linking our naira to the dollar? And what damage does that do to our economy? Yet still, these are questions that are not being asked
in the international market. So the possibility is that you are going to have a lot of foreign portfolio investors coming to the Nigerian market at your single-digit treasury bills rate. It's going to be very tight and not easy. So we have to look at that mechanism of what can we do? Our yield attractive enough for us to attract for foreign portfolio investment. So those are the areas.
The foreign portfolio investment is all a lie. They are all there to ensure that African economies do not have the freedom and the room to grow and develop and actually aid our manufacturing. All of this investment, they're not investing. They are taking out of our economy. We need to understand that it's all scams. These are all scams, but people will not understand when we talk about this. When you say somebody is coming in to invest, they are coming to take our wealth out. That's what they're doing. They will say, we'll give you this, but we'll take that out. And all of that is still predicated on a fraudulent currency exchange that devalues the rate, the rate of our devalues our currency to such an extent that our currency is peanuts compared to the Western currencies. So we cannot depend on that mechanism to build a viable nation. We need to create an entirely new system. But the experts are not even looking at that. They are accepting a system that has built into it the oppression of African economies, keeping our currencies at a rate at which our mineral resources are bought at dirt cheap prices. That's the reality we face. Let's go ahead.
That I think they are low-hanging fruit that we need to look at while we actually solve all the other immediate to long-term solutions in terms of fiscal harmonization with the monetary policy authority.
I totally disagree. foreign portfolio investment. All of that is all designed to take out our resources, our wealth. We need to design an entirely new system. If you cannot trust a system built by colonials designed to ensure that they strip our resources to now build our own economy. It will not work. We will not succeed. We need to really wake up.
Yeah, you make some very good points there, Mr. Osho. And, one of the points you
I fundamentally disagree.
mentioned upfront was the stakeholders who actually have large amounts, who have sources of dollars,
This is what I mean. We don't need dollars. Dollars is an illusion. Dollars is an illusion. We cannot continue to tie our naira to the dollar. The dollar has been used via travelers' checks in the 80s to devalue our currency. Many of us now, the naira should be legal tender in Nigeria, but many people prefer the dollar than our currency because of the systematic devaluation of our currency. So when you're talking from that point of view, you are already demarketing our currency, and that means that the value, people will place more value without questioning on the dollar as against the naira. The legal tender should be naira, and we should be putting that up because we have the resources. This is frustrating.
have to sell most of that to the CBN, such as oil company, international oil companies. So I wanted to ask you, Dr. Yusuf, do you think it's high time that perhaps the CBN, the government, the finance minister has a constructive discussion and dialogue with those stakeholders, investors in the Nigerian economy, oil companies, the oil and gas sector, one of the main sources of dollar revenues, about how they can contribute more holistically to its bid to inject more liquidity into the market? Because
they will not do anything because it serves their interest to keep stripping us of our wealth. That's their policy. That's their plan.
this issue, we've been skirting around it for a while. What are your thoughts on such an approach?
Well, I think we need to address the fundamentals. Because you are dealing with investors, you are dealing with business people. And unless you address
They are little more than colonials dressed up with different names to make you believe, oh, they have your interest at heart. They are there to exploit and keep you underdeveloped in Africa. We do not need those investors in Africa. I'm saying that categorically. We don't. Because their plan is skewed towards ensuring that the dominance of the Western culture and indeed the Western finances over African resources, stripping Africa of their resources via the devaluation of our currency, meaning that they can buy our resources at dirt cheap prices. That is a simple process that many in the so-called African experts in currency and everything do not understand. They cannot conceptualize what we're saying here.
fundamentals, moral suasion and all of that may not yield much result. I believe that first we must come to the realization that we cannot transit as quickly as we had expected into a single, converged currency. I mean, I'm talking of the speed of convergence between the I&E window and the parallel market window or the autonomous window.
Who are in control of the power market autonomous window? All of these are all Western structures. They are all Western structures. That's why I say African is a comprehensive replanning of a financial structure that will be used to tied to our resources. Because in the end, anything to do with financial institutions and everything else is all linked to how they can get access to our resources at dirt cheap prices. We need to restructure and ensure that we get true value for our resources. And that is where it is important that we dictate the price, the rate of our own currency in Africa.
That is very clear to us now. And it will be extremely difficult at this point to insist that all the remittances that will have to come into this economy should come in at the I&E window rate. That will not be realistic. Unless we just want to live in denial. So in the light of that,
The entire system has failed and is flawed. It is designed to oppress African economies. That's the reality that none of them are discussing. We need to be able to talk about this and face the facts. When I say this, look at this. Just take into consideration what I'm showing you on the screen here. Take this into factor that into consideration for a minute. One French West African franc or the Central African franc is worth 0.0015 of the euro. Equally, 1 naira is worth only 0.0013 of the dollar. These are systems designed to keep whatever economy, to keep our currencies down, to make our mineral resources cheaper for those who have set up this system, Western countries, to buy our resources at dead cheap prices. And that will keep us impoverished, and our people will continue to die in the Mediterranean Sea as a result. We need to wake up.
I think we need to be a lot more pragmatic. We need to create an autonomous window, possibly in the banking system, where the currency can trade freely at whatever the market rate is, so that these inflows can come in unencumbered. Because with the divergence that we are seeing now between the official rate and the parallel market rate, there's now an emerging market suppression. Because if the CBN is insisting that all inflows have to come at an window rate, that is suppressing the market. So while we struggle and grapple with how to stabilize the in window and restore confidence, I think we need to have a parallel window which is official, where the currency can trade freely, unencumbered, so that all the remittances and things like that will come in and we eliminate.
The biggest thing that will have an impact on all of this is, again, because we're so reliant on using dollars to buy in processed oil. That is the biggest problem we face. And we are producing the oil. We need to ensure that our refineries are fixed, so we do not have any reliance on spending a lot of money, our own money, buying processed oil. That will take at one swipe, it would reduce all of that. Because a lot of the trading of currencies is based on the fact that increasing reliance on processed oil imported from foreign countries, whilst we are leaving our own refineries, not used to really help our economy. We are relying on foreign produced processed oil, and that is not good for any economy. We have to be self-reliant. Self-reliance is what we must practice.
All these under the table transactions which are going on even right now, because we need to be pragmatic, we need to face the reality. Now, talking about the relationship between the CBN governor and the finance minister, of course, I mean, given their background, given where they are coming from, and given the disposition of the current administration to emphasize the issue of policy coordination, I expect a whole lot to happen, between the two of them, because this administration has even, and in some of the documents we saw, now has a framework for policy coordination. And that is why the finance minister has also been mandated to be the coordinating minister for the economy. So there is a framework for coordination. So within that framework, I expect this kind of interaction to yield a lot of results, in a way that we can now relate to these other stakeholders in order to shore up our external sector liquidity. I think that should be taken for granted, given where they are coming from and given, their understanding of the situation, and given the fact that even Mr. Yemi Cardoso said during the interaction with the National Assembly that he was also going to engage stakeholders. I think that is good to know. So yeah. I'm optimistic that at least something positive will come up from that interaction.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Yusuf. It's interesting, the finance minister, Mr. Wale Edo, did reference about a sum of about 6.8 billion owed to in liquidity needed to inject. And meanwhile, on his part, Mr. Cardoso was talking about Nigeria's GDP. So one of the questions many want to know is whether this marks a turning point for the CBN in terms of its focus. yes, the finance minister will play a coordinating role, but one of the long-held criticisms of the CBN is that it was acting too much like a development finance institution and not focusing enough on its mandate. How do you see that perhaps panning out going forward? And will that make a difference? Will streamlining its mandate make a difference in its ability to effectively manage and commandeer monetary policy?
Well, is that for me or for Osho?
Dr. Yusuf, yes,
Okay,
sorry,
okay.
that question was for
okay,
you.
okay. Well, I expect, in the light of what I just said, first of all, we must recognize that there's an element of market failure in the Nigerian financial system when it comes to funding some critical sectors of the economy. It's almost impossible to fund long-term projects from the normal financial market transactions. It's extremely difficult. When you look at the interest rates, which is well over 20%, and when you look at the tenor of funds that exist in our financial markets. So we must recognize the existence of market failure within the financial system, the capacity of the financial system to support the growth sectors like manufacturing, like infrastructure, and so on and so forth. So to that extent, we cannot do away with development finance interventions. And what Dr. Yemi Cardoso has said is about, working through the development finance institutions, not getting the CBN directly involved in it. But as a developing economy, we need that development finance window to be able to support some critical sectors of the economy. I think that is not, it's not mutually exclusive. I think the CBN still has that role to play, and I don't think that will distract from its fundamental role as an institution that is responsible for price stability and financial system stability. What we should not see is a situation where the focus on development finance will not be crowding out the core functions of the central bank. And I believe that the new CBN governor has a very clear understanding of that. But as for development finance, I think we still need it and to support the development process and to support some key sectors of the economy.
Yeah, very well said, Dr. Yusuf. So, Mr. Shaw, I want to take a look at a country in the region now, just a small divergence, but hopefully we can connect it to some of the issues we're facing here. So Ghana recently left its MPC unchanged. Its MPC is actually quite high at 30%, but not surprising given its inflation challenge. I think inflation in Ghana is in similar territory. How do you think the current hold policy of a country like Ghana signals perhaps the limitations of inflation targeting in helping to control inflation? Or is it more of a concern over economic slowdown? And what lessons might there be, if any, here for Nigeria? Particularly as we know that, of course, the next MPC has been postponed here in Nigeria, but Ghana holding on its rate, tackling inflation, but with a very high monetary policy rate of 30%, but still saying we're going to hold, and inflation is still quite high. Is that highlighting the limitations of trying to control inflation using interest rates as a policy tool? What are your thoughts?
I think the situation for in Ghana is actually very quite there right now. And the reason is because from the beginning of the year till now, you've seen an aggressive stance from the Central Bank of Ghana in terms of their monetary policy rate and how they've moved the rate between beginning of this year and now. And the fact that inflation is still rising and they have actually decided to keep the NPR at 30% at the last meeting just signifies that they want to be able to assess what they've done over a period of time and how that policy is actually impacting or addressing those issues that they want to address in the economy. And at the same time, you cannot ignore the fact that you've seen series of protests from the citizens in Ghana trying to protest against the policies of the government and how it's impacting the economy and the standard of living of all the Ghanaians. So I think it is more of trying to play reasonability around the issue of monetary policy rate and the inflation and check a rein on inflation. That's one of the reasons. And at the same time, I think if you look at the global space, a lot of things have been happening in that space. And whether you will like it or not, there is a feed through from what happens in the global economy to what's happening in emerging economy. And I think that's one of the reasons why the Ghanaian government is actually looking to see what effect of what they've done in terms of their monetary policy outcomes to how this is going to pan out to the end of the year. And I think is a concern for a lot of central bank across the world. Like I said earlier, you've heard about the Fed talking about aggressive and hawkish stance before the end of the year. The Nigerian central bank had to postpone their meeting, maybe based on the fact that we have a new central bank governor that is coming to place. And at the same time, we have to be able to, because there's going to be some drastic decision that's going to be taken going forward by the new central bank governor. So definitely, I think that necessitates the reason why they have to move the meeting to the next time. But that said, I think the global inflationary pressure is a concern across the globe, not just for African economy, even developed markets. And the best way for now is using the interest rate mechanism to be able to tame inflation. Whether that has worked from where we have seen that since last year till now is what it's is up for the jury to actually decide. But again, the problem we have are not just more of the monetary policy issues. There are also a lot of structural problems which most of the governments have not been able to address. And without addressing those structural problems, alongside the monetary policies that are coming out from the central bank of this world, is going to be a problem to be able to have a lasting solution to tame inflation.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Osho. And of course, sometimes central banks have to tread carefully with interest rate utilization due to the risk of an economic slowdown or even in more extreme cases, recession. But Dr. Yusuf, as we come to the end of the show, I wanted to give you the very last, but hopefully very brief word. Mr. Cardoso had commented during his Senate hearing on his appointment on a $1 trillion GDP economy. It sounds like a lofty goal, lofty ambition, given where we are now. But can you just give us the one thing in your mind that will be a game changer for Nigeria to at least get a bit closer to that mark over the next couple of years?
Well, it's all about confidence of investors. Once we're able to gain investors' confidence, then we'll be there. He's talked about $1 trillion target over 8 years. It's achievable. We have the fundamentals to support that. We have the entrepreneurs to support that. And if we're able to, work more effectively or more aggressively on stabilizing the macroeconomic environment and deal with some of these structural issues, I'm sure that we'll be able to get there. Some reforms have already started. More reforms will follow. We have seen what is happening with the NMPC and all of that. Those things could be major game changers. But what is important is to have the kind of team that we have and to see their commitment to stabilizing the macroeconomic environment and inspiring more confidence in investors, both domestic and foreign. I think with that, we should be able to achieve that.
Thank you very much on ending on quite a positive note. And of course, whatever growth Nigeria experiences has to be inclusive. We wish all these stakeholders the very best going forward. Thank you very much, Dr. Muda Yusuf and Mr. Steve Osho, joining me from the Lagos Arise studio. It's great to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Right. Okay. Let me just say quickly on that. I just wanted to just really say something here. Everything that they're saying in this broadcast, it is all predicated on the existing system, financial systems, the World Bank, the Central, the IMF, the AfriBank, all of these systems that are designed to ensure that Africa is indebted to the West. And you have to break down those parameters. We need to we have to redefine what it is we see as a currency. we have, as Africans, have to redefine that for us. What is the currency we're prepared to use? Bearing in mind what I am showing you on the screen, 1 naira is only worth 0.0013 of a dollar. That is the reality. That means that what you would spend $1 on for a resource, you get far more because your naira is only worth 0.0013, less of a 1p. You can buy a resource 100 times over from Africa using just $1, whereas your naira cannot buy not even one. You cannot even buy a tenth. You cannot buy 10% of what that dollar buys. You can't even buy that. So this is the injustice of this system. And the thing I am seeing is that the intellectuals, they are prepared to work within the framework that is fundamentally unjust to the African economy. And we need to withdraw that. That is what we face, critically. I mean, France are printing currencies that they themselves are not going to use, but they impose it on 14 African countries. And yet that forms part of a world economic structure. That is clearly unjust, unacceptable. It needs to be addressed. So whilst they're doing all this waffle and talking, I'm respectfully to all of the experts there, I don't agree with what they're saying, because the world economic structure underpins these currencies has been designed to ensure that Africa remains impoverished, and we need to deal with that. Africa must design its own financial structures that will be of benefit to the people of Africa first and foremost. So anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you find this interesting. What are your thoughts? You, of course, watching Season the platform where we speak truth to power. I've talked many times about the value of the naira. I'm showing you on the screen. 1 naira is only worth 0.0013 of the dollar. That has been the case now. I've been following this for quite some time. Likewise, equally, I will show you the ones for the euro as well. The CFA is only worth 0.0016 of the euro. That means that if you sell any of your resources in Africa, you are selling it at a loss. You are selling your resources at a loss because your currency, the rate at which they buy per kilo, has been deliberately put down. Niger did what was something very good. They have now put the uranium that they sell, that Niger sells, on world market value. So for you to get 1 kilogram of uranium before, the French imposed an unjust price on Niger to sell 1 kilogram of uranium at just 80 cents. Now that Niger has taken itself out under the French yoke and they're now running their own country, they are selling uranium at the world market price of 200 euros per kilo. So our economic structures cannot depend on a system that oppresses and suppresses African true value of our resources. We need to really make a change here. So the fundamentals are not being really understood by those who are respectfully talking about the economic structures and talking about private something investment, private finance investment, or whatever they call it. Private. I don't know, portfolio investment. I don't know, PFI, but something like that. Anyway, so what we need to really do is to address this issue fundamentally. And Africa will not grow unless collectively we address this mass siphoning away of African resources away from Africans by the world financial structures. We need to collectively address that. It cannot be addressed by one country. It has to be addressed by all 55 African countries beginning to work together. We have to make ourselves insular, protect ourselves against these sharks, the colonials exploiting our resources and paying us dirt cheap prices. We need to put a stop to it together collectively. Ladies and gentlemen, you are watching Season the platform where we speak truth to power. What are your thoughts on this? Let us hear from you. It is very important while we begin to really study what's going on. I'll be doing more and more of this on a daily basis. You'll be seeing the rate of the naira and against the dollar and CFA against the euro So we understand that every time we see that, it means that our resources are being bought at dirt cheap prices. We need to change that. The only way we can change that is we deciding what currency we're going to use. And I suggest that we do a collective currency in Africa, because safety in numbers is what will work. What they are doing, France imposing SAFA on West African countries, on Central African countries, and they don't use it. They use the euro. That means that is a blatant robbery, daylight robbery that none of us are addressing. And that impacts the whole of Africa, including Nigeria, because that means that our resources are being taken out of Africa and we are not able to access those resources to build Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Citizen AY, the platform where we speak to the power. I'll be back later on. Thank you for watching. Leave a comment. Let's hear from you. Please don't forget, subscribe to Citizen AY on YouTube. Hit the notification button. Give us thumbs up. Help us reach more people. It is really important that you support what we're doing here. Help us grow the platform. We're trying to reach 3,000 subscribers, and we need your help in getting to as many people as possible with this kind of information. It's really, really important. Thank you for watching. You've been watching Citizen AY, the platform where we speak truth to power. I'll back later on. Thank you and bye for now. Bye for now.